Today, I'm going to be reading Chapter 1 of All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Maria Remarque. Chapter 1. We are at rest 5 miles behind the front. Yesterday, we were relieved, and now our bellies are full of beef and haricot beans. We are satisfied and at peace. Each man has another mess tin full for the evening, and what is more, then there is a double ration of sausage and bread. That man puts a man in fine trim. We have not had such luck as this for a long time. The cook, with his carroty head, is begging us to eat. He beckons with his ladle to everyone that passes and spoons him out a great dollop. He does not see how he can empty his stew pot in time for coffee. Jajan and Muller had produced 2 wash basins and had them filled up to the brim as a reserve. In Titan, this is a vocalosity. In Muller, it is a foresight. Where Jajan puts it, all is a mystery, for he and always will be as thin as a rake. What is more important still is the issue of the double ration of smokes. 10 cigars, 20 cigarettes, and 2 quids of chew per man. Now that is decent. I've exchanged my chewing tobacco with Katinsky for his cigarettes, which means I have 40 altogether. That's enough for a day. It is true, we have no right to this windfall. The Prussian is not so generous. We have only miscalculation to thank for it. 14 days ago, we had to go up and relieve the front line. It was fairly quiet on our sector, so the quartermaster, who remained in the rear, had requisitioned the usual quantity of rations and provided for the full company of 150 men. But on the last day, an astonishing number of English heavies opened up on us with high explosives, drumming ceaseless on our position so that we suffered severely and came back only 80 strong. Last night, we moved back and settled down to get a good sleep for once. Katinsky is right when he says it would not be a bad war if only one could get a little more sleep. In the line, we have had next to none, and 14 days is a long time at one stretch. It was noon before the first of us crawled out of our quarters. Half an hour later, every man had his mess tin, and we gathered at the cookhouse, which smelled greasy and nourishing. At the head of the queen, of course, were the hungriest, little Abercrombie, the clearest thinker among us, and therefore only a lance corporal. Muller, who still carries his school textbooks with him, dreams of examinations, and during a bombardment mutters propositions in physics. Lear, who wears a full beard and has a preference for girls from the office brothers, he swears that they are obliged by army order to wear silk chesmicks and to bathe before entertaining guests of the rank of the captain and upwards. And as the fourth, myself, Paul Blommer, all 4 are 19 years of age, and all 4 joined up from the same class as the volunteers for war. Close behind us were our friends, Jajan, a skinny locksmith of our own age, the biggest eater of the company. He sits down to eat as thin as a grasshopper and gets up as big as a bug in the family way. Hetty Westhus, of the same age, a peat digger, who can easily hold a ration loaf in his hand and say, "Guess what I've got in my fist." Then Dietering, a peasant, who thinks of nothing but his farmyard and his wife. And finally Stanislaus Katinsky, the leader of the group, shred, cunning, hard-bitten, 40 years of age, with his face of soil, blue eyes, bent shoulders, and a remarkably nose for dirty weather, good food, and soft jobs. Our gang formed the head of the queen before the cookhouse. We were growing impatient, for the cook paid no attention to us. Finally, Katinsky called to him, "Say, Heinrich, open up the kitchen. Anyone can see the beans are done." He shook his head sleepily. "You must all be there first," Jajan grinned. "We are all here." The sergeant cook still took no notice. That may do for you," he said. "But where are the others? They won't be fed by you today. They're they're either in the dressing station or pushing up daisies." The cook was quite disconcerted as the facts dawned on him. He was staggered. "And I have cooked for 150 men." Crop poked on his ribs. "Then for once we'll have enough. Come on, begin." Suddenly a vision came over Titan. His sharp, mousy features began to shine. His eyes grew small with cunning. His jaws twitched, and he whispered hoarsely, "Man, then you got bread for 150 men, too, huh?" The surgeon cook nodded, absent-minded and bewildered. Titan seized him by the tunic and sausage. Ginger nodded again. Titan's chaps quivered. "Tobacco, too?" "Yes, everything." Titan beamed. "What a bean feast." "That's all for us. Each man gets, wait a bit." "Yes, practically 2 issues." Then Ginger stirred himself and said, "That won't do." We got excited and began to crowd around. "Why don't you do that, you old carrot?" demanded Kaczynski. 80 men can't have what is meant for 150. We'll soon show you," growled Muller. "I don't care about the stew, but I can only issue rations for 80 men, persisted Ginger. Kaczynski got angry. "You might be generous for once. You haven't drawn food for 80 men. You've drawn it for the second company." "Good, let's have it then." "We are the second company." We began to jostle the fellow. No one felt kindly toward him, for it was his fault that the food often came to us in the line too late and cold. Under shell fire, he wouldn't bring his kitchen up near enough, so that our soup carriers had to go much further than those of the other companies. Now Buckle of the first company is a much better fellow. He is as fat as a hamster in winter, but he trundles his pots when it comes to that right up in the very front line. We were in just the right mood, and there would certainly have been dust-up. Company commander had not appeared. He informed himself of this dispute, and only remarked, "Yes, did we have heavy losses yesterday?" He glanced into the Dixie. "The beans look good." Ginger nodded. "Cooked with meat and fat." The lioness looked at us. He knew what we were thinking, and he knew many other things too, because he came to the company as non-com and was promoted from the ranks. He lifted the lid from Dixie again and sniffed. Then passing on, he said, "Bring me a plateful. Serve out all the rations. We can do with them." Ginger looked sheepish as Titan danced around him. "It doesn't cost you anything. Anyone would think the quartermaster's store belonged to him. And now get on with it, you old blubber sticker. And don't you miscount either. You'll be hanged," spat out Ginger. When things got behind him, he throws up a sponge altogether, and he just goes to pieces. And as if it were show that all things were equal to him, of his own free will be issued in 1/2 pound of synthetic honey to each man. Today is a wonderful good. The mail has come, and almost every man has a few letters and papers. We stroll over to the meadows behind the billets. Crop has the round lid of marinating tub under his arm. On the right side of the meadow, a large common latrine has been built, a roofed and durable construction, but that is for recruits who has yet not learned how to make the most of whatever comes their way. We want something better. Scattered about everywhere, they were separate individual boxes for the same purpose. They are all square, neat boxes with wooden sides all around, and have unimpeachably satisfactory seats. On the sides are hand grips, enabling one to shift them about. We move 3 in a ring and sit down comfortably, and there will be 2 hours before we get up again. I will remember how embarrassed we were as recruits in the barracks when we had to use general latrine. There were no doors, and 20 men sat side by side, as in a railway carriage, so that they couldn't be reviewed all at one glance, for soldiers must always be under supervision. Since we have learned better than shy, trifling immodesties, in time things far worse than came easy to us. There in open air, though, the business is entirely a pleasure. I no longer understand why we should always have sheed at these things before. They are, in fact, just as natural as eating and drinking. We might perhaps have paid no particular attention to them, and had not they figured so large in our experience, nor been such novelties to our minds. To old hands they have been, where a matter of course. The soldier is on our friendlier terms than other men with his stomach and intestines. 3/4 of his vocabulary is derived from these regions, and they give an eminent flavor to expressions of his greatest joy as well as his deepest ignition. It is impossible to express oneself in any other way so clearly and pithily. Our families and our teachers will be shocked when we go home, but there is a universal language. Enforced publicity has in our eyes restored the character of complete innocence to all these things. More than that, they are much matter, of course, and the comfortably performance is fully as much enjoyed as planning of a safe top running flush. Not for nothing was the word lecture rumor invented. These places are a regimental gossip shop and common rooms. We feel ourselves for the time being better off than other pleasant white-tiled convenience. There it can only be hygienic. Here it is beautiful. These are wonderfully carefree hours over the bright blue sky, on the horizontal float, the bright yellow sunlit observation balloons, and the many little white clouds of anti-aircraft shells. Often they rise in a sheaf as they follow after an airman. We hear the muffled rumble of the front only as the very distant thunder, bumblebees, drowned by the quite drown it. Around us stretches the flowery meadow. The grasses sway their tall spears. The white butterflies flutter around and float on the soft, warm wind of the late summer. We read letters and newspapers and smoke. We take off our caps and lay them down beside us. The wind plays in our hair. It is plays with the words and thoughts. The 3 boxes stand in the midst of the glowing red field of poppies. We set the lid of a margarine tub on our knees and have a good table for a game of scat. Crop has the cards with him. After every misquart avert, we have a round of nap. One could sit like this forever. The notes of an accordion float across from the bullets. Often we lay aside the cards and look about us. One will say, "Well, boys," or "It was in near that time." For the moment we fall silent. There is in each of us a feeling of constraint. We are all sensible of it. It needs no words to communicate. It might be easily have happened that we should not be sitting here on the boxes day to day. It came dang near to that. And so everything is new and brave. Red poppies and good food, cigarettes and the summer breeze. Crop asks, "Anyone seen Kenmerick lately?" "He's up at St. Joseph's," I tell him. Muller explains that he has a flesh wound in his thigh. It's good blighty. We decide to go and see him this afternoon. Crop pulls out a letter. Cantorek sends you all his best wishes. We laugh. Muller throws his cigarette away and says, "I wish he was here." Cantorek had been our schoolmaster, a stern, little man in a gray tailcoat, with a face like a shrew mouse. He was about the same size as Corporal Hemistos, the terrible of Klosterberg. It in a very cool that unhappiness of the world is so often brought on by small men. They are so much more energetic and uncompromising than the big fellows. I have always taken good care to keep of the sections with small company commanders. They are mostly confounded little marnets. During drill time, Cantoric gave us a long lectures until the whole class of our went under shepherding to the district of commandment and volunteered. I can see him now, as he used to glare at us through his spectacles and say in a moving voice, "Won't you join up, comrades?" These teachers always carry their feelings ready to their waistcoat pockets and trot them out by the hour. But we didn't think of that then. There was indeed one of us who hesitated and did not want to join to fall into line. That was Joseph Bem, a plumb, homely fellow, and he did not allow himself to be persuaded. Otherwise he would have been attracted, and perhaps more of us thought as he did. But no one could very well stand out, because at the time, even the parents were ready with the word coward. No one had the vaguest idea for what we were in for. The wisest were just the poor and simple people. They knew that war to be a misfortune, whereas those who had been better off and should have been able to see more clearly that the consequences would be, were beside themselves with joy. Kaczynski said that was a result of upbringing. It made them stupid, and Katz said he had thought about. Strange to say, Bam was one of the first to fall. He got hit in the eye during an attack and we left him lying for dead. We couldn't bring him with us because we had to come back helter skurler in the afternoon. Suddenly we heard him call and saw him crawling about in no man's land. He could not have been knocked unconscious because he could not see, and he was mad with pain. He failed to keep under covers and so was shot down before anyone could go and fetch him in. Naturally, we couldn't blame Canarak for this. Where would the world be if one brought every man to book? There were thousands of Cantaraks, all whom were convinced that they were acting for the best, in a way that cost them nothing. And that is they let us down so badly. For us lads of 18, they ought to have been meditators and guides to the world of maturity, the world of work, of culture, of duty, of culture, of progress to the future. We often made fun of them and played jokes on them, but in our hearts we trusted them. The idea of authority which they represented was associated in our minds with a greater insight and a more humane wisdom. But the first death we saw shattered this belief. We had to recognize that our generation was more to be trusted than theirs. They surpassed us only in phrases and in cleverness. The first bombardment showed us our mistake, and under it, the world as they had taught it us broke in pieces. While they continued to write and talk, we saw the wounded and dying. While they taught that duty to one's country is the greatest thing, we already knew that death throes are stronger, but all that we are no mutineers, no deserters, no cowards. They are very free with all these expressions. We loved our country as much as they. We went courageously into every action, but also we distinguished the false from true. We had suddenly learned to see, and we saw that there was nothing of their world left. We are all at once terribly alone, and alone we must see it through. Before going over to see Camarak, we pack up his things, and we need them on the way back. In the dressing station, there's a great activity. It reeks as carbolic pus and sweat. We are accustomed to a good deal in the billets, but this makes us feel faint. We ask Camarak. He lies in a large room and receives us with feeble expressions of joy and helpless agitation. While he was unconscious, someone had stolen his watch. Muller shakes his head. I have always told you that nobody should carry as good as a good watch as that. Muller is a rather crude and tactless, otherwise he would hold his tongue, for anyone can see that Camarak will never come out of this place again. Whether he finds his watch or not will make no difference, and the most one will be only able to send it to his friends. How goes it, Franks? Asked Kropp, Kamarak's head sinks. Not so bad, but I have such a dang pain in my foot. We look at his bed covering. His leg lies under a wire basket. The bed cover arcs over it. I kick Muller on the shin, for he is just about to tell Kamarak what the order lies told us outside, that Kamarak has lost his foot. The leg is amputated. He looks ghastly, yellow and wan, and his face. There are already the strained lines that we know so well. We have seen them now hundreds of times. They are not so much lines as marks. Under the skin, the life no longer pulses. It has already pressed out the boundaries of the body. Death is working through from within. It already has commanded in the eyes. Here lies our comrade. Kemrock, who a little while ago was roasting horseflesh with us, squatting in shell holes. He is still, and yet is not he any longer. His features have become uncertain and faint, like a photograph plate in which two pictures have been taken. Even his voice sounds like ashes. I think that the time when we went away, his mother, a good plump patron, brought him to the station. She wept continually. Her face was bloated and swollen. Kamarak felt embarrassed, for she was the least composed of all. She simply dissolved into fat and water. Then she caught sight of me and took hold of my arm, and again, and implored me to look after Franks out there. Indeed, he did have a face like a child, and such frail bones that after 4 weeks, pack hearing, he already had flat feet. But how can a man look after anyone in the field? Now you soon will be going home, says Crop. You will have to wait at least 3 or 4 months for your leave. Kamarak nods. I cannot bear to look at his hands. They are like wax. Under the nails is dirt of trenches. It shows through blue, black like poison. It strikes me that these nails will continue to grow like lean, fantastic cellar plants long after Kamarak breathes no more. I see the picture before me. They twist themselves into corkscrews and grow, and with the hair on the decaying skull, just like grass on a good soil, just like grass. How can it be possible? Muller leans over. We have brought your things, Franks. Kamarak signs with his hands. Put them under the bed. Muller does so. Kamarak starts on again about the watch. How can one calm him without making him suspicious? Muller appears with a pair of Armand's boots. They are fine English boots of soft yellow leather, which reach to the knees and lace up all the way. They are things to be coveted. Muller is delighted at the sight of them. He matches their soles against their own clumsy boots and says, "Will you be taking them with you then, Franz?" We all three have the same thought. Even if he should get better, he wouldn't be able to use only one. There are no use to them. But as things are now, it is a pity that they should stay here. The order will, of course, grab them as soon as he is dead. Won't you leave with them? With us? Muller repeats. Kemrak doesn't want to. They are his most prized possessions. Well, we could exchange, suggests Muller again. Out here, one can who make some use of them. Still, Kemrak is not to be moved. I tread on Muller's foot. Reluctantly, he puts his fine boots back again under the bed. We can talk a little more and then take our leave. Cheerio, Franks. I promised him to come back in the morning. Muller talks of doing so, too. He is thinking of the lace-up boots and means to be on the spot. Kemrak groans. He is feverish. He gets hold of an orderly outside and asks to give him, Kemrak, a dose of morphia. He refuses. If we were to give morphia to everyone, we would have to have tubs full. You only attend to the officers properly, says Crop viciously. I hastily intervene and give him a cigarette. He takes it. Are you usually allowed to give it, then? I ask him. He is annoyed. If you don't think so, then why do you ask? I press a few more cigarettes into his hand. Do us the favor. Well, all right, he says. Crop goes in with the hand. He doesn't trust him and wants to see. We wait outside. Muller returns to the subject of the boots. They would fit me perfectly. In these boots, I get blister after blister. Do you think he will last till tomorrow after drill? If he passes out in the night, we know where the boots. Crop returns. Do you think, he asked. Done for, said Muller emphatically. We go back to the huts. I think the letter that I must write tomorrow to Kamarek's mother. I am freezing. I could do with a tot of rum. Muller pulls up some grass and chews suddenly. Like Crop throws his cigarette away, stomps on it savagely, and looking around him with a broken and distracted face, stammers, Dang shoot, the dang shoot. We walk on for a long time. Crop has calmed himself, we understand. He saw red. Out there, every man gets like that sometime. What has Conarac written to you? Muller asks. He laughs. We are the Iron Youth. We all three smile bitterly. Crop rails. He's glad he can speak. Yes, that's the way they think. These 100,000 Canartorics, the Iron Youth. We are none of us than 20 years old, but young. That is long ago. We are old folk. That is all for today. Thank you for listening.